Okay, so instead of doing an electoral map video for this week, as there hasn't been any significant changes, instead I'm going to talk about it's all well and good that Kamala Harris is so far leading by like 40 electoral votes. Still not to 270, but she's about, I don't know, about 90 electoral votes shy. But anyway, today I want to talk about something that could put a kink in the works. And that is voter suppression, which Republicans have been doing for a while now, but are now doing it with gusto. I mean, Trump has already declared that if he loses, it is only because the Democrats cheated. So he's already setting the stage for his supporters to not just question, but violently react if he isn't elected. Because he's already put it in their heads again, because this is what he did last time, trying to get people to think that he won when he didn't, and coming up with all this convoluted crap, which all the courts have said no. So, but the Republican Party as a whole has decided that they're going to help ensure that if, first off, that Trump does actually win, or if he doesn't, that there'll be enough people questioning it. Basically, it sounds like they're trying to do obvious voter fraud, so then they can point to it and say, see, there's voter fraud, you can't trust the election. I'm not sure which tack they're going with. It could be, married together that Trump will win, but they'll also point out that look at all this fraud. I don't know how it's going to go exactly. But anyway, let's just get to the article from NBC News. Republicans are setting off a slew of legal fights in the battleground states ahead of the November election, raising suspicion among Kamala Harris and her Democratic allies that the underlying goal is to gin up doubts about the result if Donald Trump loses. And that's the important part. If Donald Trump loses, because if he wins, obviously there was no fraud whatsoever. The fraud just magically disappeared. But if Kamala Harris wins, then there was obvious fraud. Now, in a state like mine, which, especially the area I live in, our representative, at least up until this year, because the maps changed, so I think Tom Tiffany is still our rep, but anyway. So Tom Tiffany is our rep. Now, he won even though he claims that the 2020 election and 2022 election were fraudulent. And it's amazing to me how people will scream fraud, 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 but somehow magically their election was just fine. It was just fraud when it comes to Trump. Which, I'm sorry, what? The fraud is not that specific here, guys. Anyway, moving on, continuing. Oh, come on, why aren't you letting me move? In Georgia, the Republican-controlled state election board is trying to give local officials the power to decide on their own whether something untoward happened during the balloting, potentially slowing the process of identifying the winner. And the people on this board, which Trump has actually named and given a shout out to when he had his rally in Georgia, are election deniers. So, yeah, that's going to go well. What could possibly go wrong with that? In Michigan, Republicans are suing over whether the city of Detroit hired enough GOP poll workers. And in North Carolina, they're alleging that the state's voter rolls could potentially allow non citizens to vote. Okay, first off, poll workers should not be partisan. I mean, they're there to ensure that people cast their ballot properly, that they vote, that their votes are counted. It doesn't matter if you are a Democrat or a Republican. It's not a partisan job. I mean, granted, they might and most likely do have views as to whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. That's possible. But the point of the job is not to be partisan. So, hired enough GOP poll workers? I'm sorry. Quota, you hate quotas except when it comes to that? Seriously. This isn't about, oh, you need to have so many of these poll workers, so many of those. They're poll workers. They're not supposed to be partisan. Anyway, so as for North Carolina, this is something that Republicans have been whining about for years. This is why we have ID laws, because Republicans have decided that the few instances of voter fraud are actually humongous, and so we need to put people in a position where they have to go out of their way to prove that they can vote. Now, like in this case, they potentially allow non-citizens to vote. With what evidence do you have that this is happening? We've never had this issue before, but all of a sudden they're worried about non-citizens voting. Non-citizens are not voting. And in the few instances where, something happens and they get through, they get found out. This is not something that needs to be addressed. Republicans have an answer in search of a problem. This is not what's happening. The reason we know that there is voter fraud on a small scale is because they get caught. Because our system is working. Republicans want to make it they just want to make it harder for people to vote. So think about it. If you have the same name as someone who isn't a citizen, they could give you hell. Actually, this is what they did in Texas when they bullied this Latino voting rights group. They just are trying to intimidate people so they don't vote, because they know that the people that they're going after typically vote Democrat. And because they vote Democrat, well, obviously, we can't win on policies. People think that we don't even live on this planet because we can't even order donuts from a donut shop like a normal person. I mean, well, we might as well keep these people from voting because that's all we got. Because, oh yeah, we had gerrymandered maps, but even that's gone to hell. Places are more and more, basically stopping the gerrymandering. Not all. There's still plenty, but at least some states. Okay. All these claims look different on the surface, but the Harris campaign says there's a pattern tying them together. Trump and his Republican allies want to sow confusion about the outcome should he lose. Democrats have submitted legal filings in at least one case that convey their misgivings about what they contend is the true purpose of the GOP litigation. You know, the GOP have never been accused of being subtle. It's pretty obvious for anyone who's paying attention that the idea is to suppress the vote. They want to suppress the vote because they want to prevent a certain demographic from voting because they're going to lose with that demographic. That's why during the pandemic they weirdly said that don't do mail-in voting, go to the polls. Now, I say strangely, that it was bizarre because the majority of their constituency are older people. People who could easily get a disease that we're in the middle of a pandemic for. So, what the hell, guys? You're trying to kill your own constituents. That is just bizarre. I realize that Trump does not actually respect his base, that behind closed doors he mocks them. But to actually try to kill your base, it's like, well, how else are you going to even attempt to get elected? But anyway. A defeated Trump could invoke the cases to revive his unfounded claim that election procedures are tainted in ways that should nullify the result, Harris campaign officials say. Trump and his allies filed dozens of unsuccessful cases after the 2020 election in a drumbeat of false claims of election fraud that culminated in a mob attacking the U.S. Capitol on January 6th to try to prevent the certification of Joe Biden's victory. So, yeah, nobody is under any delusion that should Trump lose again, that there's going to be a repeat, or at least an attempt at a repeat. Whether people have learned from the first time and would prevent it, I would hope so, but who knows? We believe that every case they filed is a brick in the foundation of an argument that they will make in November to say that the election is rigged. Exactly. A Harris campaign official said, speaking on condition of anonymity. This is fundamentally our view of what their litigation is about. That is why we are prepared. We are winning in court, and we will ensure this election is free and fair. And if you do not believe that Trump supporters are still scary, that woman, I think it was a woman, the worker at Arlington Cemetery who tried to, get Trump to follow the rules, the Trump campaign, and got pushed aside. She's not pressing charges, not because she's like, it wasn't a big deal, blah, blah, blah. No, she's not pressing charges because she is afraid of backlash. She's afraid of being attacked by Trump supporters. So, this is still a very real possibility. So, the fact that this official is remaining anonymous, that's a good call. The Trump campaign referred questions to the Republican National Committee, which is funny considering you know who runs the National Committee? Laura Trump. So, yeah, that's funny. A spokesperson for the RNC, Claire Zunk, said in a prepared statement, President Trump's election integrity effort is dedicated to protecting every legal vote. Yeah, every legal vote that goes to him. Mitigating threats to the voting process and securing the election. So, fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Cool. While Democrats continue their election interference against President Trump and the American people, our operation is confronting their schemes and preparing for November. See, they can't even hide that. They already say that this isn't about election interference from overseas, from Iran, from Russia, whatever. They already are saying that the Democrats are trying to rig the election. So we're going to out-rig them. I mean, come on. It doesn't take a genius to realize that because they're already assuming that the Democrats can't win fairly, they're ensuring that Trump can win. I mean, seriously, Stevie Wonder could see the bullshit. With rare exceptions in American politics, the 2-month interregnum between the election and the inauguration day tends to be quiet. That wasn't the case in 2020, when Trump worked to overturn the results and remain in office. And if you think that he actually believes that he lost the election, I don't remember who he was talking to. I think it might have been Moms for Liberty, or it could have been Tulsi Gabbard. One of the two. I think Tulsi Gabbard. And he accidentally kind of admitted that he lost the election. So even he knows. He's just trying to stay in power. It's not that he truly believes this bullshit. And of course, he's trying to stay out of prison. He still faces criminal charges stemming from that quixotic effort. He has been indicted by special counsel Jack Smith on charges of trying to defraud the American public and disenfranchise voters across several states, but the trial has been delayed and is unlikely to take place before the election. Trump has denied wrongdoing and pleaded not guilty. Of course he denied wrongdoing. This man couldn't take responsibility if it bit him in the ass. Anyway. Both sides are girding for a contested post-election period. Chris Licevita, Trump's co-campaign manager at a political event over the summer, suggested Democrats could try to overturn the results if Trump wins. It's not over until he puts his hand on the Bible and takes the oath. It's not over until then. It's not over on Election Day. It's over on Inauguration Day, because I wouldn't put anything past anybody. Just think about the projection. I mean, the immense projection that's going on here. Now, either he truly believes that the Democrats are doing the same thing that Trump has done, or he's just saying that because he wants to put it in people's heads that the Democrats are just like Trump. Trump thinks that if he paints his opponents as just like him, there's no difference, that somehow that gives him an edge. Alrighty. Because no, the Democrats, when he won in 2016, nobody tried to thwart the peaceful transfer of power. That never happened. I do not see what reality you must live in if you actually believe that the Democrats will do that. But it does tell you that that's what they think if Kamala Harris were to win. If she were to win, it's not until she actually places her hand on the Bible on Inauguration Day that until that happens, they have a chance. They can try to overturn. And yeah, they just They are incapable of shutting up about the obvious. They're just telling you what they want. They're telling you what they're going to do. They blame it on the Democrats. They say it's the Democrats who are going to do this. But what they're really saying is, yeah, this is what we're going to do. Democrats began preparation years ago with lawyers drafting briefs in anticipation that Republican office holders might, for example, refuse to certify election results, a second Harris campaign official said. And there's already been that happening. Actually, in Arizona, one of the counties, I think it was, I can't remember which county now. There were like 2 or 3 officials that were election deniers and refused to certify, and finally they gave in because, people were telling them, come on. So they finally gave in and certified. But if we have more and more states like that, then, basically we're going to have a coup. And yeah, absolutely, you do what you can to prevent that. This is the most prepared that any Democratic campaign has been at this point because we knew this was coming, the officials said. Yeah, because it happened once already. It's critical to have these people in the state who know the law and the players and have lived through 2020, saw what happened there, and learned from it. Exactly, which is why I hope that when the votes get certified by the vice president, that the police will be out in full force and not giving any ground to whatever protests might happen, because we've already seen what happens when Trump sends his mob. They will try to get into the Capitol and they will try to stop the certification. All right. Among other legal challenges, Republicans have opposed Arizona's election procedures manual and Nevada's law allowing mail ballots to be counted after Election Day so long as they were postmarked beforehand. Which is stupid. It's postmarked. Seriously, I wonder if these people who are pushing this, do they know how anything works? Do they think that this can be backdated or something? That there's this vast conspiracy amongst the post office that to backdate things so it looks like votes that came in too late happen to come in early? I mean, I realize you're conspiracy theorists, but Jesus Christ. Ground zero might be Georgia, a state Biden narrowly won in 2020 and that Harris is aggressively working to hold. Trump faces criminal charges in Georgia over his efforts to overturn his defeat in the state 4 years ago. He has pleaded not guilty. And even if he were to be elected, which God forbid, even if he were to be elected, Georgia, he can't pardon himself even if he were to be found guilty. Actually, I don't think he could make that case go away, because that's a state case, not a federal case. So that case he would not be able to make go away. The only person who could probably do that is Brian Kemp. And considering he's not exactly the best buddies with Trump, even though I think he would still vote for the idiot, because, he still cares about party more than country, even though he stopped an obvious fraud the first time. I'm not entirely convinced that, that, I mean, maybe he would stop it a second time, but he could also probably make this case go away. Who knows? I mean, it could be anything. I've heard plenty of people who are like, "Oh, Trump is guilty, but I'm going to still vote for him." Like Nikki Haley. I mean, I don't understand that. I really, really don't. At issue this year is whether county election boards in Georgia are free to use their own discretion in certifying election results. The Republican controlled Georgia Election Board voted 3-2 last month to expand the powers of local officials, enabling them to certify results after conducting a reasonable inquiry into their accuracy. There was no definition of what a reasonable inquiry entails. Which means that they're trying to allow for alternate facts. They're trying to allow for election deniers, Trump cultists, to question these results, and just by the very fact they're questioning it becomes a reasonable inquiry. So yeah, that's great. This is the same state that, because the lines can get long at polling places, this is the state who thought, you know what? They don't need to eat or drink in line. If they really want to vote, let's make them suffer. So, yeah. Trump has praised the 3 Republicans who voted in favor of the rules as pit bulls for honesty. But Democrats cautioned that the new rules could disrupt the hard and fast timetable for certifying elections in Georgia. Further, local election boards have never possessed that kind of authority and are supposed to perform merely the straightforward task of adding up the vote totals, Democrats argue. Exactly, which is why I said earlier, poll workers are not partisan. Who cares if there's someone who believes believes one thing and another person believes in another? Who cares? Their job is to count votes. As long as you can do basic math. Who cares what political party you're part of? The idea is that people are going to count correctly. Not, well, there aren't enough people who are election deniers. That's not how this works. If anyone alleges fraud occurred in an election, the proper place to test that claim is the courts, they add, which is what Trump wants to avoid, because he did that in 2020 and he lost every single damn time. If someone thinks there's a reason to throw out ballots, that's a decision that's made by the courts. Sarah Tyndall Ghazal, the lone Democrat on Georgia State Election Board, said in an interview, "That is not a decision made by a partisan body of civilians on election boards, many of whom have no background in any of this other than their partisan relationships." So, this tells us that there was one Republican. I mean, I guess he could be independent, but most likely one Republican who voted with her because, he actually has principles, which apparently a lot of people in the Republican Party do not have anymore. Justin Levitt, an election law professor at Loyola Law School and a former Biden White House official specializing in democracy and voting rights, said the role of a county election board is tantamount to simple addition. Exactly. If you can accomplish that, you can be on the election board, because your whole job is to make sure that the vote totals add up. That is it. It's a process of saying 1 + 1 = 2. It's not to say 1 + 1 equals, I don't know whether there are bamboo fibers in the ballots. which, for those who aren't aware, that was one of the ridiculous claims made in Arizona. That's not what the local election boards, are there for, he said, referring to a conspiracy theory that circulated in 2020 about fraudulent ballots from Asia. I mean, just think about it. They have to be racist even here. I mean, why the hell would ballots from China, because here it says Asia, they specified China. Why would ballots from China have bamboo fibers in them? Seriously, what is going on here that you think that China uses bamboo? You think of pandas? Seriously, are you confusing Chinese people with pandas? I just do not understand that, except for the fact that it's horribly racist. I do not understand what the hell they were trying to prove with that. The Democratic National Committee sued the board last week to block the new procedures from taking effect. In its filing, the committee argued that the new rule would introduce substantial uncertainty in the post-election process and invite chaos by establishing new processes at odds with existing statutory duties. And that, of course, is the whole point. They want chaos. They want it because they want their king to win the election. They do not care if they have to lie, cheat, and steal to do it. They're perfectly happy as long as they get power. Both the Harris and Trump campaigns are deploying ample legal muscle for the election and its aftermath. An RNC memo released in February said the committee was involved in 78 lawsuits in 23 states. That's great. Should the Democrats choose to continue their attacks on election safeguards through Election Day, we will be prepared to litigate and ensure the election is fair, transparent, legal, and accurate, Zunk said. You did that in 2020. You failed because it was fair. It was legal. You just don't like the results. Just because you don't like the results doesn't mean the election was not fair, transparent, legal, and accurate. It just means you lost the election. Why the hell have an election if it's predetermined? I mean, unless you're a dictator, in which case, well, you got to make it at least look like people like you. The Harris campaign says it has retained hundreds of attorneys spread throughout the country to protect her legal interests. Heading the team's legal election protection effort is Dana Remus, Biden's former White House counsel. The campaign is getting some outside help as well. Jim Messina, who managed Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign, has started a political action committee that can raise unlimited sums of money and will also assist in courtroom efforts. Norm Eisen, special counsel to the House Judiciary Committee for Trump's first impeachment trial, is outside counsel to the group. He's a fun dude. I like him. One casualty of contested election results is public confidence in the system, election experts warn. Voters come to feel democracy is broken and may react by either refusing to participate or lashing out in anger, which is the whole point. This is what the Republicans have been doing from the get-go, ever since MAGA. Actually, probably also Tea Party, but definitely MAGA. They keep saying that government is broken, it doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. Democracy doesn't work. And then they do everything in their power to break it. So then they can point and say, see, this is what we're talking about. You should do what we're telling you to do. So, and of course, lashing out in anger is another coup attempt. So yeah. You might also know it as an insurrection. Trump has fed doubts about the trustworthiness of U.S. elections in both victory and defeat. I have to admit, at least he's consistent, but it's really odd that when he wins an election, he's basically saying, what, you guys stupid? This has to have been rigged. When he won in 2016, he claimed without basis that he had lost the popular vote only because millions of people voted illegally for his opponent, Hillary Clinton. Ah, that's how that works. And when he lost in 2020, he argued the election was rigged in Biden's favor. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Do you not know how things work? If millions of people voted illegally, I'm pretty sure that those millions were scattered not just in Democratic states, but also Republican ones. If what you're saying is true, she would have won the election, not just the popular vote. I do not understand how this man's brain works, and to be honest, I don't want to. Though he lost California by more than 5 million votes that year, Trump said recently that he would win the state if Jesus Christ, or alternatively, an honest mortal, were counting the votes. You really think that Jesus Christ would count votes in favor of you? Because notice, he's talking about honesty, but what he really means is count the votes that favor him. Because notice he has no problem with the vote counting in states he won. And seriously, what is it about Jesus Christ that makes you think that he would do what you want? I mean, seriously, this is the guy who, in the Bible, went into the church and kicked out the money changers. This is not the guy that you think is going to help you. And I'm not even religious, but I've read the Bible, which we know that Trump has never read the Bible. I mean, he says things like 2 Corinthians. When he shows how religious he is, when he made protesters leave, made the police kick out the protesters, peaceful protesters, so he could walk across the lawn to a church and hold up a Bible upside down. Yeah, this is not a man who's religious. And neither am I, but I still know enough to know that it's 2 Corinthians, not 2 Corinthians. All right. Trump said if it wasn't for rigging, he would have won California. That's like me saying if it wasn't for rigging, I'd be a supermodel, Messina said. I love that. I just love that. Oh, that is awesome. In the years since Trump has advanced erroneous claims of voter fraud, the partisan divide over election integrity has deepened. A poll taken last year showed that only 22% of Republicans were highly confident that the votes in the 2024 presidential election would be counted accurately, compared to 71% of Democrats. If you're so despondent, you can just stay home. I mean, if you're so sure that your vote for Trump wouldn't count, yeah, I guess you'll just have to stay home then. We already have members of the public who are 100% convinced that there's no way possible to have free and fair elections in Georgia, Ghazal said. Many of Trump's supporters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th did so in the mistaken belief that he was robbed of victory in 2020. The first rider to breach the building, Michael Sparks, told the judge at a hearing last week that he believes to this day that the election was stolen from Trump. Sparks was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. And if you watched the January 6th hearings, there was actually a rioter. Actually, I don't know if he was actually a rioter or just a protester at the Capitol. I don't know if I can't remember if he breached the Capitol or not. Who testified that, he was suckered into believing that the election was stolen and that they needed to do this to preserve democracy. And then he came to understand that no, that's not the way it worked. Let's see here. Some election experts fear that Trump's voters are apt to resort to violence again if he loses in November. Really? We need election experts to tell us that? Not people who have eyes and a memory that isn't of a goldfish? I'm worried about the potential for chaos, Levitt said. For people who are told the election is stolen, taking to the streets is very natural when you believe you have no power to affect the outcome peaceably. That is true. That is very true, and that's why Trump's rhetoric and what the Republicans are doing with election laws to suppress the vote is so scary, because if they do enough to suppress the vote that Trump wins, don't think that Democrats won't realize that the election was stolen from them. So, yeah. It could be ugly either way, simply because the Donald Trump's people have been thoroughly brainwashed into thinking that anything short of a victory is a steal. And if they successfully suppress the vote, like these laws are trying to do, then there are plenty of Democrats that might, become violent. So, yeah, this has a potential to be such a powder keg. And it's all because a con man just can't accept that he isn't the incredible person that he imagines he is in his own head. And as a quick fun thing I briefly saw on the Daily Mail, and just remember, I saw this in the Daily Mail, so take this with a salt lick. But according to them, Anthony Scaramucci said that, who, not the biggest Donald Trump fan, I might add. I mean, he was in the White House for 2 days or something? But according to the Daily Mail, he claimed that Melania wants Trump to lose. Now, there's been plenty of jokes amongst the late night comedians that Melania hates her husband, and according to Scaramucci, she does indeed hate Trump. Now, it's possible that she does hate him. Whether she hated him before he ran for president, finding out that he cheated on her while she was nursing Barron with Stormy Daniels, or whether this was just a marriage of opportunity, marriage of convenience, and that she never particularly liked the guy to begin with. That's a possibility as well. So, I don't believe this article from the Daily Mail because it's the Daily Mail. But, at least it's reasonable. I mean, people have been wondering whether Melania actually likes her husband. How many times has he tried to hold her hand and she slapped it away? So, There's something to it. But anyway, that is the end of this article. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video.